we've laced the belt through the pinch drive. We've joined the belt with the alligator clip. We're now going to tension up the side of it. So I strongly suggest, we referred to this earlier, to stay loose. Do this adjustment first to get your pinch first. So whatever you do this side, you do the other side. These are in a slotted hole to go backwards and forwards. So we're going to run this up on this thread all the way. This head of the bolt will come up to here. Then we're going to lock up the lock nut. So the head of the bolts come up to this point. That's got full tension on it now, but it's slotted back and it's pinching the belt. Remember to lock that up. That's an adjustment you'll never have to do apart from when you replace the belt. You should never touch this during operation. So we've got that set against there, that's locked off. We'll repeat the other side. Okay, we're back under here now. We've laced it, we've joined the belt, we've done the side tension. We're going to do up this tension. So pretty much there's two springs in here that we loosened off earlier. Do not take these nuts right off, it'll go off like a shotgun. It's important to leave both of them on there as a safety aspect. We're now going to rattle these forward with a rattle gun. We're going to bring that pipe up to that washer pretty much. On the side, I'll show you shortly, there is a green indicator line where the pipe has to float through that green indicator. That tells you that your product belt is at the correct tension. Try and take them forward evenly. Don't use it as a tracking device, it's purely for taking the slack out of the belt. So I brought them both up so they're about 5 mil off that front washer. So I know that's a pretty good indication because that's where your green line's going to be when we show you from the exterior. Always make sure that you go back and lock these nuts up. I don't do them now, I'll make sure I do all my adjustments and I come back and lock them up. Okay. We're about to start and run the machine. When we start and run it, you'll see initially, once we engage the belt, the pink line will jump back, but it will spring forward into the green section. Whilst the machine was running, we actually hit it with a rattle gun. We buzzed it up a little bit more, so you should have seen that pink line start to appear in the green shaded area, which is the correct tension. Like I said before, for those that don't have a green shaded area, 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch off that silver or gold base washer is okay. Anything over that, you need to rattle it forward. Keep in mind that that tension is not only just an overall belt tension, but it is a seal between the back of your belt and the inside of the tube. So down in the hopper end, it actually maintains an outward pressure to stop product trying to leak down the back side of the belt. So now that we've got the overall belt tension correct, we're up to actually the point where we need to adjust the belt as far as tracking. I find there's too many people try and track their belt before they actually tension a belt. I strongly suggest you tension it first, simply because if you have a wandering belt with the incorrect tension, you're going to have to over correct it with the adjustment of the tracking. So what I've got here, I've got 0 in the middle. Hopefully you can read this. 0, +1, +2, +3. Back to 0, we've got -1, -2, -3. So on the Batcos, this and this, which this is your drive roller shaft, this is your pinch roller. It's very important to make sure that to get this to steer, you can do this adjustment either side, but it's very important I do it this side because there's no belts and pulleys. So if you loosen these 4 bolts off in the black plate, 3/4 inch nuts they are, just back them off a turn or so. If you over undo them, you can find there's a slight bit of twisting and it can self-adjust. So 1/2 a turn, 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn on these 4 bolts. Then we've got a 7/16 inch pusher bolt here and here. So pretty much what we're doing is, because your belt comes through, around, rolls, wraps, pinches, comes back over your overall tensioner, stays under this one and goes out here. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to influence which side the belt's going to. So if the belt's leaning towards this side, pretty much what we have to do is we have to overcorrect it whilst the belt is running, very important, to make sure the engine's running and the belt's running, because it will self-center. Now a lot of people adjust it and then they don't allow the belt to do a couple of full revolutions. The best way to count how many revolutions it's done is the alligator clip that we joined earlier. Wait for that to go through the hopper as a common point. Too many people try and adjust it and find that it's done nothing. So this particular machine's 92 foot long. So it's 190 odd foot of belt that you have to try and correct. So it's really important to let it do a couple of laps of honour to ensure that it self-centres. Too many people try and pre-adjust it and preempt what it's doing. They say we've turned either of these bolts quarter or half a turn and nothing's happened yet. So they do it another quarter and a half a turn. So they've actually given it 1 to 1.5 full turns, and it actually all of a sudden the belt jumps to the other side, and a lot of people will ring up and say, oh, I can't adjust this, it's all over the shop. It's purely because they're impatient and they don't let the belt do a number of revolutions prior to it settling down. So undo these 4, use these. Remember, if you're going to push it this way, you have to slacken this one off and drive it with this one. Or if the belt's going too close to this side, you want to be able to push it one way or another. So pretty much if the belt's leaning this side and the way you check is in the front, if the belt's close to this side, you want to try and extend this whole black plate so both of these move at the same ratio, forward or backwards. So you actually loosen this nut or push bolt. For the older machines, I suggest you put a bit of WD-40 or diesel on it so you can undo that. While the belt's running, you'll give it half a turn or thereabouts. Walk away from it, get underneath it, go to the end of it, count the clip through twice. Doesn't matter if it's a 45 foot machine or a 110 foot machine. Let that clip come through twice and then check where your belt is. If it hasn't moved or it's moved slightly and you need to go a bit more, give it a little bit more. It'll get to a point where after a couple of revolutions it becomes more reactive. Therefore, it's very important not to overreact with this bolt. So let it settle and do what it needs to do. Keep in mind, once you've adjusted this, I leave this all slightly loose and then go and check either end, because this pinch drive is very close to the bottom end. So it's very important, because it's so close, one can influence the other. So make sure your lower end, which we'll go through shortly, isn't over adjusted the opposite way. This here, 2 bolts on the pinch, is intentionally left loose. So this looks like a slotted hole. It's actually a secondary hole. So there's one hole, there's a second hole. Here, this is actually a slotted hole, here and here. So it's actually got a nylon bush behind it. It's very important that you leave these loose. Time and time again I go on farm and these are actually, someone's actually done them up. Okay, once you do them up, you actually lose the ability for this spring to act and pinch. So it's very important, even on some of these older machines. Sometimes fert, dust and that can get through here, it can corrode and lessen the gap in behind here. So undo these, spray a bit of spray lube, WD-40, chain lube, whatever, and grab a mash hammer and belt this backwards and forwards until it frees up. You'll see it starting to shuffle. Okay, once it's free, what I do is wind them up until they bottom out, then come back about a full turn on that bolt, and that will allow that to spring react backwards and forwards once you get product and tension on it. So if your belt's going the other way, so it's closer to the drive pulley side, basically what you're going to do is you're going to back this nut off like that and chase it with this one, which is actually going to push that, which I'll actually go through and do. You'll actually see these lines at 0. You'll see it start to move. You can influence it by pushing it like that, so you can actually see that line's now coming offset off 0. So pretty much what it's doing is influencing the belt the other way. So we're adjusting the bottom end, very similar to the top end. It's a much finer push bolt on the top end, but pretty much you're undoing these 2 bolts, only 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn. You're undoing this lock nut, so it's a 28mm spanner or inch and an eighth. So we're either pushing this or pulling this. Pretty much I always go to the side where the belt's closest to, so you actually have to extend that. So you just do 1/4 to 1/2 a turn at a time. Let the product belt do a couple of full revolutions to self-center, very important. Can't stress that enough. Don't try and, let it do half a revolution and then go and give it some more, because all of a sudden the belt's going to be on the other side. So once you achieve that and you get your belt floating, it will float left to right slightly, but have an average or a medium gap either side, so the belt's floating left to right only 5mm or so, and obtain that good 1/2 inch either side of your product belt. Once you're done, lock this up, lock that up, Where I do one adjustment, I go back and check the middle adjustment. These two are close together, so one can influence the other a bit and one can steer the other one a bit. So it's important to get a happy medium, go back and check your work. Once you're happy, lock it up, use it, do a load or two, and just double check that your adjustments are correct.